All right, folks, we're going to do a little recap of episode 9, season 9 of Alone. Now, I did something on the last recap for episode 8 that I never do. I made a prediction, and I'll be damned if it didn't come back to bite me in the butt. So on the last recap, I said that Adam was the one to watch. I felt really good about Adam. It bit me. I never make predictions, and I made a prediction. But anyway, we're going to talk about Adam here in a little bit. But for now, Juan Pablo. He's my guy. He's taken home the win. I feel very confident about it. I know I said I never make predictions, but this is it. He's the dude. And speaking of Juan Pablo, bam, just got this in the mail the other day. This is a new book that he just released called Thrive, Long-Term Wilderness Survival Guide. Guys, I have looked at a lot of survival books, field guides, whatever you want to call it, over the years, and I have never seen anything that even comes close to how detailed and complete this is. I mean, like if you're interested in long-term wilderness living, preparedness, whatever, get this book. Not only does it have all the, typical survival guide type stuff in it, there's a big section on like the mental preparedness, which I really like, because that's something, especially in these long-term situations, that is so important, but it's so often just kind of glossed over. Because it's not super glamorous to talk about, but very, very important. Anyway, moving on, we're going to talk about what we saw in episode 9. All right, so before we really get kicking on this recap, I just want to mention a couple of other channels that you might want to check out that are also doing these recaps. First of all is Wonia. She's got a great channel where she's doing some really good, insightful recaps on all of the episodes, and she's got a lot of other really cool, really interesting ancestral skills type videos over on her channel. I'll link to this down in the video description, so please go down there, check that out, and check out her channel. Timogen is also doing, he's got a YouTube channel where he's doing recaps. And then Jordan Jonas, winner of season 6, has got a great channel as well. He's doing recaps when he can. Right now, this time of year, he's kind of off doing his wilderness survival course out in the backcountry. So he's kind of hit or miss on some of the recaps, but he also has a good channel. So with that, let's get into it. So we're going to start out with Carrie Lee. Now, there's just a couple of things that I want to mention about Carrie Lee. And the big thing that jumps out at me is that she's shifting from fishing to more trapping. And there's one thing that I noticed when she was out checking and setting additional snares out there. It's one just very small detail that you'll notice. She's placing like little fir needles and small little sticks as guides to help move those animals into the snares and get them to enter the snare in the exact right position. And that just, for me anyway, that tells me that she's got some experience doing this, because it takes an understanding of how an animal moves and an understanding of what you can get away with. Because if you try to force an animal into a place, oftentimes they just won't go. And so it's a real subtle way of placing those sticks that just guides them into the exact spot that they need to be for the snare to be effective. So I think she's doing a great job at that. And then later on in the episode, we do see her catch a squirrel. It looks like she's using a lot of more like the burrow type sets in the middens. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention about Carrie Lee is she talks about the difference between survival and wilderness survival or wilderness living. And I share that that same interpretation of those terms that she does. She talks about, the term survival to me, it's a term that I use a lot, but for me that speaks more to like the military type, like really hardcore type survival, something that's very utilitarian. And wilderness living to me is a more a holistic view of being out there. It's basically being a part of nature and working with nature versus against it. That's a pretty big distinction in my mind, and so I like that she brought that up. All right, so we're going to move on to Adam, and Adam starts off by talking about basically the need to be out there actively hunting or fishing or trapping to make something happen, but then also having to find that balance of how much do you do that? Because to do that, to be active every day, takes calories, and it takes calories that you don't have. And if you're not successful, you're not replacing those calories. But on the other hand, if you're not out there, you can't be successful. And so it's a catch-22, and it's a fine line that everybody, as the season goes on, everybody starts to ask themselves that question. And I got to that point, just like everybody else. I think it was around day 50 or so. I went out, we had a big snow, and I went out looking for that mountain lion that I'd seen earlier. I wanted to find fresh tracks, and I spent, I don't know how many miles I walked that day, but I was out all day long. I don't know, walking through knee-deep snow, and I don't know how many calories I burned that day. I probably lost 2 pounds that day. And when I came back that evening, that was the first time that I realized that I couldn't afford to do that anymore. And so I kind of had to change my strategy at that time and become more sedentary than I was accustomed to. So it's definitely a question that everybody asks themselves, and even Timogen talks about it in this episode a little bit. So there's one scene in there where Adam gets a grouse, and he talks about how appreciative he is of that grouse. And that's, that is something you are. Everything every mushroom, every squirrel, every grouse, every fish, every little bit of food that you get out there means so much to you because it's so hard to come by. And for most of us in our everyday lives, food is, we take it for granted. It's so easy. Our pantries are full, most of us anyway. Or, we can go to a fast food restaurant and pick up a burger or whatever. And so being appreciative of food is not something that most people really get to experience. And that was kind of what I was getting at on my season when I was talking about sucking the eyeballs out of a rabbit. The world would be a much, much different place if at least once in their lives, everyone got to experience that kind of hunger. So at one point, Adam, while he's out hunting, he gets in this just real thick, nasty, what looks to be an alder thicket to me. And I have, man, more times than I care to recall, I have been tangled up in that stuff. And it is absolutely exhausting going through that. And then later in one of his segments, he talks about his legs just feeling like lead, and ends up just running up against a wall to where he feels like he just has nothing else to give. He's having a hard time finding enough to keep himself fueled, and makes the call. He picks up the sat phone and calls in. Taps out, tells them to come and get him. But he seems very okay with that. He seems very good with that. And I think that, like so many people who go through this experience, I think he comes out the other side of this experience having learned something about himself that I really, truly think that there's no other way to learn other than going through something like this, that's something that is incredibly challenging, that you're not sure that you can complete. All right, so we're gonna move on to Timogen, and right off the bat, Timogen is looking very thin. just the way he's moving around the woods, he just looks just worn down. And he mentions something about when he's laying in his shelter, he mentions thinking about his girlfriend and how that gives him strength. And I think that for everyone who makes it deep into these seasons, I think that's a universal thing. I think everybody spends a lot of time thinking about their family. They come to realize how important their family is to them, how much they mean to them. And for so many of the people who make it deep into the season, their family becomes a source of strength, and it certainly did for me. Another thing that Timogen mentions that I thought was very interesting and that I shared with him is he talks about how his motivations to be there and to stay there have changed from when he first got dropped off till now. And he talks about when he first got dropped off there, he was there to prove something to himself. He was there for himself. And now it becomes more about he feels like he's doing this for his family. And I went through the exact same change. When I first got out there, and I think they even used some of this for voiceover, but when I first got out there, I was doing this for me. I was doing this was something that I always wanted to do. These are skills and a lifestyle that I've practiced forever, for as long as I can remember. And I just wanted to be put into that ultimate situation where it was make or break. I wanted to know if I was good enough to actually do it and to make it work. But as the season went on, my family, especially my boys, became much more important than what I had originally started with. And as the season went on, that they were more of what I was doing it for. I wanted to show them that you can make it through the hard times. You can persevere if you just put your head down and grind and do everything that you can to make it through day by day. So yeah, I really appreciate how Timogen talked about how those things change through time. He also mentions how this experience can change you. And I can tell you 100%, I don't think it's possible for someone to go out and do something like this and not come home a different person than they left. And I think the biggest reason for that is that this type of experience, it removes us from our daily lives, and it removes us from all of the distractions that we all have. And it gives you the time to kind of look at your life from a step removed. And that is incredibly, incredibly valuable, because it gives you the time and the perspective to question how you live your life. And when you can do that, you see things that you may be doing that might not be in accord with whatever your values are. And so often that's the case. And so when you're able to see that, then you're able to make those adjustments, and that's where that change comes from. All right, so we're gonna wrap up with Juan Pablo, and the big thing that everybody's gonna go nuts about that Juan Pablo says is he is planning on fasting for 20 days. So I would imagine, I haven't looked at Reddit or any of the comments, but I imagine people are going nuts on there about this. But it makes perfect sense. So here's the deal. Juan Pablo has said multiple times that he is not having any success with small game. He can't find any small game on his site. So he's not going to have any success hunting or trapping on his site. And to feed himself up to this point, it's been fishing. It looks to me like he's done pretty good with the fishing, but with the river icing up, what's he going to do? Juan Pablo, to me, it looks like he's still got some weight to lose. So what's his options? If the river freezes solid, he could potentially try some ice fishing, but there's a big difference between walking out on a lake to ice fish where you've got stable conditions and a steady thickness of the ice, and walking out on a river, walking out on river ice, which has flowing water, because river ice is sketchy. If you've got a little eddy or someplace, it might look like you've got a solid, nice thickness of ice out there, but you could be walking on 6-8 inches of ice, and then all of a sudden you step on skim ice. If you go through ice in a river, that's bad news. Not only are you probably going to get hypothermic, but there's a real potential for you to get swept underneath that ice, and that's not good. They may never find you. And so Juan Pablo's big way of feeding himself this whole time is basically out at this point. And so does he shift and try to put more effort into hunting and small game when he hasn't found any success there anyway? Or does he rely on his body type and his fat reserves to carry him through what he feels could be the end of the competition? Personally, I think he is being very strategic and very smart about this. Is it the most exciting way of surviving, or is it the most exciting for the viewers? Probably not. Is it the best strategy he has to win this competition? I think so. Just one more time, I'm gonna plug Juan Pablo's book. Like I said, it's a very, very well put together. He's put a tremendous amount of effort into this thing. It's crazy how comprehensive this book is. I would highly recommend this. Go to Amazon, pick it up. He's probably selling it on his website. I got this off Amazon. And leave him a review. You know, if you get the book, go on Amazon, leave him a review. I got to do that once I get off here. I'm going to go straight in there and do that. But anyway. All right, guys, that is going to be it. We will be back next Thursday with another video. I think you guys are going to like what I've got coming up for the video next Thursday, so be sure to check that out. And of course, Friday we'll do another recap. Peace out. See y'all next time.